everyone, and welcome back to the Colour Cave, where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem, and I have here the August Scrawlrbox. Here we have a monthly art subscription box, and this is the UK based box, so they send you a set of surprise supplies every month, and they also provide you with a prompt and you try and create an artwork using the supplies in the box. We also get a little scrawler zine with some information in it, and we usually get a featured artist with a nice piece of artwork as well as a sticker and a sweet. So it's quite a well-rounded box, and Scrawlrbox have been around for a little while now. I like the look of this. So here is the scrawler zine. You can see it says August on it. So this tells us a bit about the supplies, but there's lots of other helpful information in that too, so we're going to leave that till the end. And here we have the featured artist. Oh, now this looks like paint pens maybe? Markers of some description. I love the fact that they've gone with a different format. It used to always be just an A5 format, but they seem to be switching it up recently, and I really like that because I think it adds interest, especially with a piece like this as well. So if we turn over, it tells you about the featured artist, which is Caparso. It is a graffiti writer and member of Bandits Dresden, which is a graffiti crew from Dresden in Germany. There's also links to their social media down below as well, so if you like what you see, it means you can go and check out some more of their artwork and show your support. Now we usually get a surface to art on, and in this case this is some sort of artboard. It is slightly curved, and that's something that kind of rips my knitting a wee bit. It can be the manufacture process, or sometimes it's the wrapping process, but it's I'm hoping that it's going to be sturdy enough for what we want, and there seems to be 3 in here as well, which is great. I really appreciate that, just for the simple fact that it gives you 1 to test your supplies out on, you've got 1 to do an artwork on, and then if it all goes horribly wrong you've got a spare, or if the first one goes okay then you've got room to play with it some more. So 3 is, as always, 3 is the magic number, so looking forward to that, but we'll find out a little bit more about that in a second. So I've got the package here, the package. Oh yes, we've got pens. Okay, so here's our sticker that matches our scrawler zine, and usually the artwork as well. It's usually like a snippet of the artwork, so that's fairly obvious, and I like to play my little jigsaw game, so that belongs in there. That's me happy, we can move on. Okay, so we've got the list of supplies, which I don't like to look at either because I like to explore those by myself. Oh my goodness. And we also have a sweet here, and it's a Walker's toffee. It's a chocolate covered toffee. Once again, absolutely great, but sticks to your teeth like hell. I like the fact that it's colour coded with our featured artist as well. That appeals to me very much. A selection of pens, not my favourite type of box, but if the combination is right, then all is well. So they've given us a Uniball Signal Broad Tip in white, so this is kind of like standard issue white gel pen. Great for highlights, great for outlines on dark artwork to make things pop, like this. Really handy to have, and I think this is a 0.7 nib, if I remember correctly. I may be wrong, that's just off the top of my head, but we can check that out when we look at the list of supplies. A zig writer for vellum. We've had one of these pens from Scrawlrbox before. Basically it's archival quality ink, and obviously it's designed to draw on vellum but can be used on a variety of surfaces. Now there's 2 nibs to this, and if I remember, one's a little plastic nib like this, and then the other end is a much thicker bullet nib as well, so that gives you some line width variation as well that you can play about with, but you can also use it to write as in, you know, like your normal handwriting as well. I remember the ink being quite rich in these as well, which is nice, and I'm pretty sure that they're waterproof once they're dry. Again, don't quote me on that, but we can explore that in a little bit more detail in a minute. We've also got a Derwent line maker, and this is basically one of Derwent's fine liner varieties, and this one is red, and it's a 0.3 tip on it. Again, I'll just show you there. It's quite dainty. I'll be interested to see the actual pigment quality in this. Quite often when you get a red fine liner, it's kind of more orangey than red or more pink than red, so it'll be interesting to see if that's a true red. Last but not least, oh wow, we're all about the Molotovs just recently. We've had some of these in Upcrate recently as well, haven't we? These are Molotov One for All acrylic twin markers. So these are acrylic paint pens. You can hear they've got a little ball bearing in them to help mix the paint. And we've got blue, green and black, which is always helpful. Now there's a little window here, so I'm assuming this is to show you the ink levels. As it goes down, obviously you'll be able to see how much is left. And let's take a look. So we've got a kind of bullet tip, and we've got a bigger round tip. Okay, so this end's a 4mm and the other end is a 1.5. To be honest, I don't find that all that exciting. It's nice having two tips and one marker. There's going to be a lot of shaking involved. I would also suggest storing these horizontally, because otherwise what's going to happen is one nib's going to dry out and that gives you a high chance of clogging. So I'm really interested to try these out. I say I've never seen these before, and I always like that in a subscription box because I've been unboxing boxes for quite a while now, and it's not very often I get an item that I haven't come across, even though maybe something similar. So I'm really excited to try those out. Am I excited about the supplies as a whole? Truthfully, not really. Again, just not a big marker person, not a big pen person. But as I say, that's, you know, you're going to come across boxes like this periodically. But I have yet to find a box full of pens that's really set my my imagination and my creativity on fire. As per, we will get to testing them out, and that might spark some creative juices, who knows. Let's take a look at our list of supplies. The one for all acrylic twin markers, that's really difficult to say for some reason. These highly opaque and UV resistant acrylic markers can be used on nearly all surfaces, well I would imagine so if they're acrylic, and it rattles off all the things that most other paint pens can be used on. It is water based, okay, non-toxic, so really these might just be very similar to Posca pens then if they're water-based. Non-toxic can be, and can even be mixed for unique, highly pigmented colour blends, creating reliably vibrant and bold colour every time. They're quick drying, permanent, and are waterproof once dry. This sustainable acrylic marker system has also been innovatively built to enable refills. So, now that's something I really like, and that's one of my very few complaints about Posca pens. They're not refillable. So that's a really, really nice touch. Recommended retail price is $4.99 each. That's quite steep. They were saying about mixing the colours. If they're so mixable, why would you give us this selection of colours? We could have had something a little bit more interesting, surely. It would have been nice to have maybe a different colour range to mix. I think they kind of missed a trick with that there. The Zig Vellum twin marker, dual tipped, a 0.5 and a 1.2mm nib. Waterproof. Archival quality ink, is water-based, light, fast and odourless. Dries quickly and there's no worry for bleeding or wrinkling the paper. And here we go, this is what, oh god, I hate it when they do this. The Derwent colour line maker, and you can have one of three colours. I have red, you could also get a yellow one or a pink one. I have no objections to subscription boxes doing this, especially just now because I know it's difficult, like supply chains are breaking down, pandemics, it's difficult to get things. What I do object to is not everyone's on a level playing field, and I've discussed this with the Upcrate before. If you're going to have a challenge of some description and there is some sort of prize, and in this case it's perhaps being featured in the Scrawlrbox, it's not fair if you end up with a crappy combination of colours. So I've got a bit of a thing about that. It's not the end of the world, it's not a big deal, but I just think it would be nice if everyone had the same supplies so everyone's working with the same stuff. Because some people have ended up with really horrible combinations of colours because they've gone for this random, which colour did you get? Anyway, that's the rant over about that. This is a classic drawing pen, so we're talking about the Derwent line maker here. Super fine break resistant nib that glides effortlessly over the page to produce smooth, it says free flowing, that should be free flowing lines. Water-based pigment ink, rich and pure tones, I'll be the judge of that are light, fast and quick drying, so it's light, fast as well, that's good to know, and it's permanent when dry, so water-based media can be layered over the top. We do have to be careful with that, it has to be absolutely bone dry, and I have seen people complaining about fine liners before saying, oh, it's supposed to be waterproof. You've got to give it a really good length of time to dry just to make sure, and that will vary depending on what surface you use it on, you know, what type of paper you're using as well. So that's something just to be aware of. In this case, I'm more interested in what the actual colour looks like. I have used line makers before, but it's always been black ones, so that's pretty good going. The Signo Broad White pen, it's a 1mm rollerball tip, so it's bigger than I thought it was. Fully opaque white pigmented gel ink. I disagree with that as well, it's not fully opaque. It depends, if you get them going on a scrap piece of paper first, they seem to end up more opaque, and I don't know whether it's just as the ink's mixing as it goes over the rollerball. I have found many times in the past that I have to go over the same area of an artwork again just to get that really nice, like proper opacity that you cannot see through. And saying that, I do use these, it's not that I don't like them, I've actually got one kicking about in here. So you can see mine's actually yellowed a lot over time. That's how long I've had it, but I really don't have much left in it. The ink level is down under the little signal logo now, so I do use these, I'm very familiar with them, but I don't agree with the fully opaque statement. It's light, fast, acid free, ideal for adding highlights or using as a convenient corrector pen. Yes, there's always that. It's fitted with a form-fitting rubber grip for your writing and drawing comfort. That's something that I appreciate on account of having a gammy hand, and I do find these quite comfortable to use, so yes, I fully agreement with that. The art boards, ta-da, which we have 3 of. Daler Rowney mixed media art boards. Durable, perfect for all artistic techniques, great for almost any media, including pencil, ink, pastel and charcoal, but are an ideal pairing for watercolour and acrylic. So they've given us because they work particularly well with this kind of thing, so that's good that they've thought about that too. They are naturally white boards with a lightly textured surface and can be used for both wet and dry techniques. If these do have a nice texture, it would actually be really fun for me to try pencil on these, because generally, you know, when I'm using pencil I tend just to stick to paper. So that might be quite an interesting affair for my hopefully 3rd spare board. I might take that up in my spare time. Okay, and let's take a look at the Scrawler Challenge. Digital Dystopia. Oh my goodness, that's a good one. This month's Scrawlrbox takes us to the streets with our featured artist Caparso. But these aren't the streets as you know them anymore. Experiment with blocks of colour, let the paint pens run, vary the weight of your outlines or forget the rules and scribble outside the lines. How do the pens layer up together on the boards? Do they clash in chaos or align in perfect harmony? Conform or rebel? Time to leave your mark while you still can. Interesting. Okay, so while we're mulling that over, let's take a look at our Scrawler zine and see what other juicy tidbits we've got to talk about this month. So the first page is just an overview of the supplies, and then we get a wee word with our featured artist, and this is just immense. Look at this. Very distinctive style, and you can see that there is that graffiti influence, and I think that's amazing because it's quite subtle, but it's definitely there. Really, really detailed work as well. So there's a little bit of an interview with them there. And there's also a QR code this month that you can scan to see the artist in action. That's really, really cool. I really like that. That's something a little bit different, and it gives you an extracurricular activity outside of your box. So thumbs up, Scrawlrbox, well done. Scrawler tips, I always like the inclusion of this as well, because this is helpful for anyone that's new to the medium, just to help you get a little bit of a start. Okay, so there's talking about them being refillable, which we already know. It tells you to shake them. Yeah, you need to, always with these you have to prime them before the first use. And you can see that the tips on them are white. You have to shake like nobody's business, and these nibs depress into the barrel. And basically you do that the correct way up and you press down onto the paper, and what that does is let the paint flow down into the nib. As I said, I would store them horizontally, but before each use, especially when they're sitting, the paint can start to separate, and that's perfectly normal. So make sure you give them a really, really good shake to mix that paint well before you use them the next time round. So in addition to that, they're saying they would recommend that you dab the paint off the nib before you start if your markers have been left unused for a while. Just a scrap piece of paper and gently scribble until the pigment is flowing freely again. So the markers are suitable for outdoor use as well as indoor use. So you can try them on unusual surfaces, or although we are not encouraging you to deface anything you shouldn't, so be sure to double check first before you start creating on something that is not allowed to be artified. Your marker may need 2 to 3 layers to achieve a seamless block of colour, but be sure to let your first layer of paint dry before adding new layers. If your subsequent layer is not properly dry and you start to go over the top of it, you actually end up lifting that first layer. So that's quite common with paint pens as well, and that's a very, very good point. So those are excellent tips. So now we have the Scrawler gallery from the June 2021 Scrawlrbox. This was Ethereal Entity, that's right, I remember. I really struggled with this one, it just wasn't for me at all. And these are absolutely freaking gorgeous. Love them so much. Oh, and Grace is in here too. I know who this is. She streams on Twitch quite frequently. She actually mostly watercolour paints and gouache paints. It's really nice to see Grace's art in here, that's lovely. Love them. Absolutely love it. I love this one up here as well. This is obviously a nod towards Alice in Wonderland. That's super cute. Alice in Wonderland is my favourite Disney film ever, like bar none. And here we have a little article on the difference between street art and graffiti as well, which is something that's really nice because it's one of those art forms that's not mentioned as frequently as some of the others. So that's a lovely little way to round off this Scrawler zine. Alright then, so we're going to test out the supplies. And I'm going to test out on the artboard that's been provided to us because we want to get a true representation of what these supplies can actually do. Okay, so the artboard itself, it's fairly sturdy. There is a little bit of give in it, which is not a good or a bad thing, and the texture is very, very slight. And just from looking at it and have a quick feel of it, I do think that coloured pencil might actually be okay. I don't know about the layering capabilities perhaps, but it definitely has enough tooth to take some coloured pencil. I'm just going to prime these markers, so I'll show you how to do it with one and then I'll do all of them off camera because it takes a while sometimes. So give them a really good shake. And then just on a scrap sheet of paper, I'm going to start depressing the nib. So I'm going to start with the thicker nib, this one here, and start my pressing down process. So we'll see how long this takes. And I can see the paint coming down already. If I just show you the nib again, can you see it starting to soak into the pen? That's ideal. And then if you just give it a couple of swishes, that's you're ready to go. So I'm going to do this with both ends. It wouldn't be a colour cave video without some mooing. Okay, so that's that one ready to go. Okay, so that's us ready to rock and roll now. So I'm going to start with these twin tip markers because I want to give myself a base to try this white gel pen over the top. So we'll start with the large nib, and you can see that that's a fairly chunky line. You can vary the line width slightly by tilting it because it's got that slightly rounded shape on it, so that's always nice. So that's not too bad. It is kind of spreading a little bit, which I expected, it's paint. So let's just do a nice big colour block. So you can see there we're covering the area fairly quickly. It does look pretty opaque. So we'll see how that dries, and I'll just show you the finer line here as well, which doesn't look all that much finer really, does it, than what's going up on here. So that's quite interesting in itself. So the double-ended marker thing might actually be a bit gimmicky here, considering there doesn't seem to be much variation. I mean, that one actually looks thicker than these ones. It could be a trick of the eye, but they should maybe have considered a bit more of a variation between the two. If you press lightly, I mean, even the minute you start changing direction, it does come out really thick. So that's actually a bit disappointing. I'm just going to go the other end as well. Yeah, look, there's just not much in it. I mean, okay, you can cover a larger area because you can angle the broader nib, but in terms of, I don't know. Yeah, okay, so that's interesting itself. This block of colour that I'd already put down, it is starting to dry already. I can see just a little bit at the edges that's still wet, but that's more or less dry. It is quite warm. Well, it's very warm in the cave today, actually. It's very, very warm outside. Not complaining, it's Scotland, so we don't see that very often. So here's the blue colour. Ooh. Now, this is a nice shade of blue. Again, let's do the same thing. Let's get a nice chunk of colour. And here's the skinny nib. Okay, so that actually looks a little bit better than the black one. The other thing I did notice as well is because you have to depress those nibs to get the paint flow going, I was very careful not to press hard, and it may have flattened the end of the tip. I'm just going to compare it with this one actually. Let's just have a little look here. That's the wrong end though. That's not very professional or very helpful. Try again, Jim. Nah, looks pretty much the same. Show you them side by side. Doesn't look like there's much in it, so it's not damage from the nib that's caused it. And we've got the green as well. So the green seems a lot skinnier too, which is interesting. I don't know, maybe the black one was just a bit of a misnomer. That's really, really, really bright. So I think if you wanted to mix these colours, the best way to do it would be to do it on a ceramic palette. I've got my trusty old IKEA plate here. So yes, not high-end palettes today, but you don't need one. So yeah, if we take the bigger nib and do that, and we'll take the blue as well, stick it side by side. Now you need to be quick here. I've just grabbed the first available acrylic brush to me, and yeah, okay, giving us a bit of a turquoisey colour. Now to me, I wouldn't want to do this for the simple fact that what's the point in putting paint in a marker if you reverse that process and take it back to traditional paint? It kind of defeats the purpose of it being in a marker, so I'm really not that keen on this. If we're to layer them up wet on top of each other straight out the pen, I do have a funny feeling it would contaminate the nibs, but you can always wipe that off, so let's give that a quick go as well. Let's see what happens here. Not a lot. We'll let that dry, see what happens. There doesn't seem to be much residue on there though, which is always something. Okay, so let's take a look at these other pens. This is the drawing pen, so the Derwent Line Maker. And I say I was quite keen to find out about the colour. And yeah, okay. So the line width is obviously very fine, that's the idea. And the ink flow is really good. If you go quickly, it doesn't skip or anything like that. It is a bit of a kind of washed out red. It's not a really deep, rich, vibrant red. But we may be able to go back over it and deepen that down the same way you would with any other pen. So again, I'll let that dry a little bit and then I'll go back over it. And then we've got the writer for vellum. So here's the plastic nib, and you can see that's given us much finer line, and that's really nice. Now if you press a little bit harder with these pens, you do get a thicker line, so you do have that, you know, that variety there that you can use. And here's the thicker one as well. So I don't know how much use we're going to get out of this, just because obviously we've got this black paint pen as well, so I don't know, it seemed kind of pointless to be honest. Again, going back to what I was saying about the paint pens, they could have given us a different colour. It depends obviously on how you want to use these items, but I can see that soaking into the artboard pretty well, and the artboard has taken all of these supplies very well indeed. Now I just want to make sure that's completely dry. These ones are almost dry. Okay, so the other thing we were talking about, the opacity of the paint pens. So if you look now, I should be able to go over the top of this, and look how much that's pinging out on the black. That's exactly what you want, and that's one of the advantages of paint pens, because you can do so much with it. And it means you can build your drawing up in layers as well, and you don't have to worry about what's poking through. Now we've got this little white gel pen, or it's actually quite a thick white gel pen, and I always try and get these going on a scrap of paper first because they are roller balls, and that seems fairly good. So let's see what we can do here. There we go. So we'll take it over here too. So I'm just going to fill that in, and we'll let that dry as well, and you'll see what I mean about the opacity of it. I'll zoom in a little bit once it's dry and I'll show you. Okay, so we can layer the colours up with no opacity problems, so that's always something. This down here doesn't seem to be drying as well or as quickly, and it's probably because it's 2 layers of wet paint that have been smooshed together. This should also write over the top of our vellum pen. And you can see there I'm having problems with skipping already, and that's classic of gel pens unfortunately, but that is just one of those things. Okay, back to my line maker over here, and I just want to go back over this. Number one, I want to see if the artboard's going to take it or it's going to start pulling up, but it seems absolutely fine. Give that a little bit of a chance. Now, I'm assuming that this won't draw over the top, no, of any of the... Oh, there we go. Okay, so we can use this on top of the paler coloured paint pens and it will show up, which is good to know as well, just in case we decide to get super creative. And you can see when I've used these wet paint pens together, it's not really done much, it just looks as if I've made a mistake. So again, if you're going to mix, I would go for the old plate and paintbrush trick, but for me that's not really, I don't know, it's just there's no point in it because we might as well just use normal paint. So let's see how this shows up on the other colours. It should pop out no problem, there we go, excellent. And also on top of the fine liner as well. Now I do have a funny feeling it may pick up some of the colour. Now that's quite common with white pens, especially gel pens. Sometimes they seem to be able to like suck up the pigment of the colour that's underneath and you get like a tint to it. The easy way to remedy that is to let the gel pen dry completely. I mean, give it quite a good length of time to dry, and then just go back over it again, and you seem to be able to cover it up with maybe 2, sometimes 3 layers, and it's then a non-issue. Okay, now if I just hold this up as close as I can you see what I mean about the opacity of the white gel pen is not completely opaque. The black is shown through, and obviously that's going to be where it's most extreme, because black is a very hard colour to cover, and it's the same down here as well. So you do need to go back over things if you want a really crisp white highlight, but that's not really an issue. These supplies work really well together. I think they've done a good job. I just maybe would have liked a bit more in the colour choice, because we've got this pen which is really quite versatile, so we could have done with something a bit more exciting rather than this black one. But overall seems to be a good set of supplies. I'll just show you here as well with the paint pen. This is the vellum pen that we're using, and you can see that if I go over it, that will cover up the vellum as well. This, you know, the paint trumps anything else. So you've got really good options there, and that gives you quite a bit of creativity and quite a bit of versatility when it comes to thinking about your scrawler challenge. Let's talk about that and then I'll go back to the gel pen, hopefully it'll be a bit drier by then. So really we've got quite a lot to think about with this challenge for digital dystopia. I do think it's actually quite well paired with the supplies. I think doing something along that theme would be much harder if we had something like watercolours. So that's good, because one of the things that I've noticed recently is it seems to be that they pull prompts just like off the top of their head and they don't really think about the supplies and how that fits in. So yeah, I think that's a reasonably good pairing. I've got no idea what I'm going to do, but I've got time to think about that before I do the next video, which is always helpful. But we'll just snap back to this white gel pen now. Right, there we go. This is me trying to go back over it again. I'll probably have to zoom in a fair bit there. But can you see how it's lifting? That's me trying to go back over the top of it, and it's actually pulling up the gel pen underneath. And that's been a good 10-15 minutes I've waited. Obviously with the magic of editing you didn't see that. So that's something you're going to have to be really careful about if you're trying to cover up larger areas. Obviously if you're just going in one application in one line like this, so if you're doing line work it's going to be no problem at all. But it's the same down here with the vellum as well. If you see, even if I make sure the pen's going before I go to my actual piece, it's just lifting what's there. So on this board, it may be quite difficult to layer up that gel pen, but at least we know about it and it's something that we can work around. So there you go, guys. Overall, I think this is quite a good box, and say for a box of pens, which is something that I'm not particularly excited about, I think it's pretty good. I'm still not convinced that these aren't a bit gimmicky because there's so little difference between the application of the nib sizes, but we can play about with that a bit more when it comes to the challenge. Yeah, I would say this is a mediocre box. The different varieties in the pen selection is pretty good. I would imagine, unless you're a very, very new artist, you're probably familiar with fine liners and gel pens, because that's usually the first kind of things that we get to grips with, and one of the first things that we try as artists. The paint pens and the vellum marker maybe not so much. Kind of a mediocre box, but not a bad one, to be fair, and people that get excited about pens will probably quite enjoy this one. So that's it for this box. I would love to hear your thoughts on the box, what you think of the contents and what you think of the prompt. I'm really looking forward to trying to create something with these paint pens. I've been using paint pens a lot recently, which some of you will know, and it's something that I really enjoy doing. So I think I can come up with something pretty cool, she says, hopefully, for the Scrawler challenge video. So all that's left to say is thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you staying till the end, and please stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll see you back in the cave on Thursday for another video. So have a good day everyone, and bye bye for now.